for another show, for another episode of our Raw Reaction series, the show in which we react to the latest Arsenal news, fixtures, matches, transfers, everything on here. And obviously get involved with talking to you guys, the listeners in our live chat. Now, those that are tuning in live today are doing so because they've clicked, first of all, the subscribe button, and second of all, the notifications button, which is the little bell next to that. And if you want to get involved with our live chats throughout these shows, then the easiest way to do that is, of course, to be able to do that by clicking the little bell, joining through the show through your notifications being sent to your phone, and then you can get involved in the chat and have your discussions and your say. So like Victor, for instance. Hi, Victor. Thank you very much for tuning in. OP, for instance, tuning in as well. Plenty of people are tuning in to watch these shows, and I want to get as many of people on here as possible in the discussion, in the chat box, and having a chat. But here we are here today to have a discussion about what is I would say interesting, but this is becoming increasingly more common throughout our time with Stan Kroenke as 100% owner as Arsenal, is the communication between the Kroenkes and the club and the fans is increasing exponentially. And we've received another dose of that today, or this morning, where BBC's David Ornstein has interviewed Josh Kroenke. And the full transcript of the interview is up on BBC Sport and, of course, on the Arsenal website. And we're going to go through that interview, get my reaction, get your reaction as much as possible. Now, it's a very, very long interview, and we're going to cover it as much detail as feasibly possible. But I have left the link to the article in the description. If you click it actually whilst this is live, I think it should still be up there whilst this is playing. But I'm still going to show you on the screen, so you'll see it in there as well, so you don't need to worry about that. But let's dive straight into things. Thank you ever so much for tuning in, people. Patrick's there, Elite's there as well. Jack Perry's loving Kroenke at the moment. Pablo Arma, I love that name, Pablo. Little Pablo Aimar. That's what it used to be on the old Benfica Argentinian winger. Richard is in as well. Loads of people tuning in. Thank you ever so much. So let's get straight into things and talk about what we're here to, which is the Josh Kroenke interview with David Ornstein. As I said, it's on the Arsenal website and you can go check it out. But let's go straight into it. I'm going to try and read through and look at as much as feasibly possible. So the new season is here and you seem excited. The question I tell our group across all of our organisations, all of our teams, you're only as good as your last game. Unfortunately, those last 45 minutes in Baku were not our best in the moment. There was a lot of frustration, but there was a collective resolve to not have this feeling again anytime soon. We had some great meetings and set out to try and better ourselves this summer. And I think we've come to back a new season as a stronger club. Very political statement there just to open it up. How wounded were you? This section is about the reaction to obviously the end of last season, which we got a bit in the Denver interview with, of course, Arsenal Media and with Mike and Andy. Still so strange that those two managed to get an interview with Josh Kroenke. Let's move on to Spirit. He says, you seem to welcome the leadership role. Obviously, Josh Kroenke has taken over as sort of the main guy. Understands Stan doesn't really get involved too much, sort of just signs off where he needs to, but Josh is really the main guy in the Arsenal organisation. And he says, it's something that I'm comfortable with. I think you can't be a leader without having great people around you. We've had a lot of transition at the club over the last 12 to 14 months especially, and there have been more than 50 new appointments just in football operations alone. Now, I wasn't actually aware that there's that many people that sort of changed around, and that is huge. We think of, obviously, Raul Sanllehi, we think of Edu, Unai Emery, of course, as manager, Vinay Ventukasham being promoted within the job as well, Huss Fahmy, there's fitness coaches that have come in, but 50 is a lot, and it goes to show how, I don't want to use the word broken, but how reliant we were on Arsene Wenger in a way, to have his fingers in so many pies, and that just wasn't healthy in a modern day football club. And now we're starting to act like a modern day football club, and these appointments of bringing in this many people is certainly helping the Arsenal do that. I said be excited earlier this summer, and I genuinely meant that. The meme that went round about Josh Kroenke saying be excited, and of course signing Pepe and the latter and etc. of all these players that signed is great. And I think that he wasn't clearly lying. It's very obvious to see that. And I think that a lot of fans can take solace in that. I said be excited in the summer, and I genuinely meant that. Not anything with short-term signings, but be excited about the future of the club, because I think we've got some great people in strong places of leadership and are allowing them to do their jobs and do their jobs well. I'm going to skip past the Baku stuff because I just think it's something that they've already gone over in the Denver interview. Now, let's move on to the interesting stuff, which is, of course, about the summer window. Ornstein asked, saying, the perception was the club had no money, but some now say that Arsenal won the window. Josh said, I joked with a few of our colleagues back in the States about this topic, and as much as I want to win the conversations in July, I really want to win the matches come May and June. So I think it's important to have that type of conversation. But whether we're going to be be lauded for our efforts or perceived in a negative light. We want to be doing what we think is right for the club. And I think we had a very strong summer. We addressed certain areas on the pitch for this season and in the years ahead. We had certain age profiles that we were after. Without Champions League football, we weren't exactly sure, but I encouraged our football operations department to be aggressive. And when Arsenal Football Club knocks on a player's door, it's a different knot. That's definitely synonymous with what Raul Sanllehi said, and he's just sort of regurgitating that a little bit there. This summer, even though we weren't in a position of strength coming out of Baku, I think that there were a few people caught off guard that Arsenal Football Club still has the aura that it does. We're excited to keep pushing that and now and in the future. It was a very, very positive window. We all know that. We know that Arsenal had a strong window from what we saw in the transfer market, but the fact that there's been this long-term planning is really good to see. Just have a quick chat on the chat, check on the chat box to see what you guys are saying. Archie's definitely saying fair play. Kroenke. Sim actually highlights that Lundberg was another appointment promoted up from obviously the youth side, which is a great addition to the first team setup. Elite said it's good to hear from Josh. Hey Arsenal, Mr. Podcast. Morning from India, says De Beer. Daniel Hartley says hi, Tom. Owen Martin says we have to give credit to our club management for their openness, and I think that's definitely something that we've got. Now there is a question that's going to come in later on from David Ornstein about not specifically mentioning the We Care Do You campaign. And of course, that was something that I pushed throughout the summer as well. And I think that there has been a reaction. And now it's very, very difficult to say whether that reaction has come based off of that or not. There's part of me that says, yes, I think it did. I think that the fan pressure is definitely having an impact, and that is great. But I also think that this would have still happened in a way in certain aspects, maybe not to this extent, and maybe not with this communication. I think the signings and the transfers still would have happened, but I'm not sure about the openness and the dialogue with the fans now, which is great, really, really great to see. And I think that the campaign, a lot of people who are actually involved, and I'm talking about the people who actually commissioned the campaign, not people who claim to say they started the campaign, but the real people that did, no people in wigs, real people. And I think that them moving forwards can be really proud of what happened. He says, how did you do it on such a restricted budget? He says, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I think the main message was simply to be aggressive. I know I've repeated that a couple of different times, but be aggressive meant a lot of different things. It meant going out and finding what was possible, because after the match in Baku, we had to rethink a few things. Obviously, we know that maybe Wilfried Zaha would be an Arsenal player right now if we had got Champions League football. Obviously, that's just speculation, but that was the very strong rumour. And David Ornstein himself, I think, said that earlier on in the window that if we'd had more money, we could have pushed for it. But without Champions League money, we just couldn't. I'm not going to share any details, but going into the summer, we knew we were going to have instruments in place that were going to allow us to be aggressive, and they weren't going to be dependent on sales. These guys went out, they worked their magic, and I'm happy to have them on our side. In terms of the people that are going out, obviously we're talking about Husfami, we're talking about Kajigal, we're talking about Raul Sanllehi, we're talking about Edu, to a lesser extent, of course, who came in later. But I think that aggressiveness is obviously the key word within this, as well as the word excited, which he uses a lot. And those two words together, I think, can demonstrate a lot about this season. I think that Arsenal have been aggressive, not just in the transfer market, but in the games as well. We've been aggressive in the games that we played so far against Burnley and Newcastle, trying to win those matches, and it's worked. And I think we've seen exciting football on the pitch, and I think we've seen excitement in the fans having packed out houses, packed out stadium rather. Fans on social media getting really excited. Even just the banter with other fans is a lot more confident, and it's no longer just looking at what other teams are doing. We saw a weekend where both United, City, Spurs, and Chelsea all dropped points this weekend, which means Arsenal are still up there in the top two, and obviously that will change come Saturday if we don't pick up enough points against Liverpool. But I think we've seen a lot of excitement this season already, and it's really, really great to see. Let's see a little bit more about what you guys are saying in the chat. Jaffa Kate Rapper, fantastic name, says, I felt the protest was ill-timed and ill-conceived at the time, and the actions of the club would have happened anyway. This kind of business doesn't happen in a short time with knee-jerk reactions. I agree. I think there were aspects of this that didn't happen because of the protest, and I've said that. And I don't really see it as a protest. I'm not sure. I don't look at it. I see it more as a campaign. And I think that whilst I agree with you, Jaffa, that I don't think this happened because simply the campaign was there. But I think that the communication in particular, and actually the dialogue with the fans, did happen a lot because of the campaign and the fan pressure. But as I said, we are going to cover what Stan says about that. Now, this is a really, really interesting question from Dave, and it goes to show the quality of him as a journalist, asking questions that really sort of delve incisively into the inner workings of the club. And it says, was there any investment from KSE or at all? Or was it just within the self-sustaining model? Obviously, asking whether Arsenal fans for years and years have been moaning that KSE do not invest, do not bankroll is the word that people use, bankroll the club. And you can understand why, because there's a lot of people out there that know and are educated enough to understand that it's very difficult to do that, especially under FFP constraints. And we've made a huge losses over some seasons, and haven't been able to be as financially strong as maybe we should have done, because of poor transfer market activity, poor contract decision making, referencing Mesut Ozil, for instance, and selling players for not enough. And now we're starting to see a change in that. But it's still interesting that he asked. And he says that I'm not going to go into much detail. People can read between the lines of being aggressive and what that meant, and what that might have meant. That's kind of how I would answer that question. It's going to be a private matter for us here at the club, but I hope our fans understand that by being aggressive, that's exactly what we were. Now, it's a really intriguing answer that I know doesn't say much on the face of it, but the fact he doesn't say no, there wasn't any investment specifically from KSE, and our self-sustaining model is what pushed us towards the transfer market. And there's two ways. You can either say that, one, maybe he doesn't quite understand either the question or how David Ornstein means. Is he talking about, is it just because if he'd have just said it's within the self-sustaining model, I think obviously we would have known that that's the way Arsenal are moving. But the fact he didn't say no is is interesting. It's sort of that tantalizing openness that gives you hope that maybe there is some investment going in. My instinct tells me that it is just within the self-sustaining model. And we saw that based on how the deals were structured and the incomings from the Iwobi and like the Bielik deals and the other signings and the sell-on clauses, that actually we didn't spend all too much this summer. Just this summer alone, obviously not talking about the structured deals and what that means in the long term. Like Pepe didn't cost 72 million this summer. He only cost between 20 and 30 million. But I think that it's interesting how he answered that question, that it doesn't actually say whether he invested or not, but it didn't say that they didn't invest, which I think is a good answer from Josh. And it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. Dark Druid says that aggressive is a bit broad. It is very broad statement. But I think that aggressive is the right term still, because we did go out there and got business done. We were proactive. He talks about the word proactive a lot in the interview, and I think that's what Arsenal were. Nick's calling him David Fraudstein. I think that's harsh. I don't think he is at all. I think he still has very strong connections in the club, and he knows what he's talking about. Carl Halberg says that buzzing the owners are taking steps to change the narrative surrounding Arsenal. Negativity has held us back for far too long. Proactivity is definitely something around Arsenal now, and it's good that we're seeing that develop towards the future. A. Rahman says that Josh deserves to be applauded next time in the Emirates for the changes. Now, of course, he was at the game against Burnley. And he goes on to talk about in the interview how he actually restrains himself in the ground, but when he's watching the game at home, he annoys his girlfriend, is what he said, which I think is a really nice statement. If you think that's quite relatable, isn't it? You can relate with that. I can certainly relate with that. Just a brief story. People know a long-time listener show, I was on holiday last week, still producing content for you, which I'm hoping you're really enjoying every single day nearly. And we were in this small, quiet pub in Cornwall watching the Newcastle game. And she's putting her hand on my leg saying, look, just if we score, you don't jump out and celebrate, because there's maybe a lot of fans who don't support us. And when I'm sitting there going, I'm not sure I'm about to do that. And it's fair to say I didn't, still got up out my chair and shouted when we scored. And it's great to see that we've got that relatable connection going on there with Josh Kroenke. And I think that was a really, really strong answer from the American. Did fan unrest? Now, this is the interesting question, talking about did actually they react based off what the fans did. So you can see the question there. Did fan unrest cause you to act in the market? And he says, I would say that if you're reacting and doing club record signings based on public opinion, you're not going to go very far as a club. We weren't reactive this summer. We were actually proactive. It was unfortunate that the summer unfolded publicly the way it did with some of the supporters groups. I tried to answer some of their concerns to be best to the best of our ability. But we had instruments in place behind the scenes heading into the window where we knew we were going to be aggressive, again, that word, and we weren't going to be reactive to anything. We were going to be proactive. Now, before I go on, I think this is the point I want to highlight. Again, I don't think the transfer business is based on a reaction from the "we care, do you" or any fan protests or unrest. I don't think it is, because I don't think that any workings of the club in that way that's so serious like that go off fan reaction. And I think that's fair enough. And I do believe that. It's again, just to put forward the point, it's the dialogue we're hearing now that I think is the reaction from the fan campaign, which we like. The transfer market is an evolving, living, breathing thing. There are certain moments in time. Sometimes those moments are sooner. Sometimes those moments are later in the window. We definitely saw that with David Luiz and Tierney. We identified a few key targets, worked on those deals, and over time we were able to execute them. I hope that our fans are just as excited as I am about the upcoming season, because I think we've got some talented new players in at an age profile where they're going to grow and improve on the pitch over the next 8 to 10 months or so and well into the future. It's an exciting time to be an Arsenal supporter. Now, I agree partly with that statement, but there is an issue with it that I find, and that's the transfer market dealings about a centre-back. They said they identified the targets. And we all know that at the start of this window that although the club, or it's reported that the club's main target was a winger and sort of getting goals from wide areas, and that's the main concern they had. But we all know, and the club would have well been aware of this, that we needed a defender. We need to improve the centre-back area of the pitch. We needed experience. We needed quality. I don't think we've got a world-class player in David Luiz, but I think we've got someone who can definitely do the job that we needed for a season or two, maybe. And something that I think we still need to build on come either January or the upcoming summer. At the end of the 2019-2020 season. But I think that he's incorrect in saying that identifying targets, because we weren't proactive enough in the search for a defender early enough. There were links with Upamecano, there were links with Ruben Diaz a little bit earlier, but these weren't early enough. These links came in way too late, and it concerned me that the club went down that route, and it concerns me going into the latter stage of the season where this will leave us. In terms of the defensive signings, I think we really lacked proactiveness in that area. I think it was really, really positive, and it's important to highlight the positives in terms of the wingers, in terms of central midfield, Danny Ceballos, investing for the future, in terms of William Saliba, and of course the defensive signing of Kieran Tierney, and then obviously the short-term, really late signing, as he highlights in the answer there, about David Luiz. But I don't think we were proactive enough in pushing for the centre-back area of the pitch, and that still, for me, is a huge concern. Archie says we wanted Upamecano and got Luiz for short-term. Saliba deal did drag on a bit. It certainly did, and obviously Spurs didn't help with that. Elite says that we did put a £60 million bid for Upamecano. If we sold Iwobi a week earlier, we could have got him. Now, I don't agree with that, because I think that the money we made earlier on in the window actually meant that we could have still gone on for a structured deal for Upamecano. Maybe if we'd have sold Iwobi earlier, it would have helped for sure. But I'm not sure whether it was completely reliant on that deal. And the Iwobi deal frustrated me because the way Everton came out saying that he was a target the whole summer, which I don't agree with, because we know that Wilfried Zaha was their main man. And it wasn't just him. They went for other players. They got Moise Kean as well, and ended up getting two wide players in Kean and Iwobi. So I'm not sure if that was true. And I think that was a really big issue for Arsenal at the end of the window. Gunner Smasher says Luiz's experience is invaluable to us. I don't care about these big names for big money. He fits what we need now, and I totally agree with what he's saying there. Let's continue and move on. Obviously, there's a Nicolas Pepe signing video. It was one thing saying be excited, but it was another thing to deliver. We were fortunate to be able to close on a few deals. It's never fun to be left at the altar, per se. Another interesting statement. Well, it's weird, this Arsenal thing and marriage, Robin van Persie and now Josh Kroenke. When I made that statement about being excited, there were a few things that were starting to come about. While we didn't know if we were going to be able to fully execute, you never know until the deal is completely won. I thought we had a good chance if we acted aggressively in those moments. Fortunately, we were able to execute it, and that's hopefully just a sign of encouragement for Arsenal fans that when we're out in the marketplace, you might never know what we're thinking, and you could be surprised by some of the names that come up. But we're going to be aggressive, and we're going to be thinking both short-term and long-term in everything that we're doing. Again, another very political answer, sort of just keeping things ticking over. Criticising the past for not filling needed positions, now seeing more decisive Arsenal. I wouldn't say we were more decisive. I think it's just a different structure. That's an intriguing statement based off obviously the change from Arsene Wenger to Unai Emery, saying that now things are happening because it's a different structure. Maybe there was a lot of criticism without the 100% structure that Stan Kroenke had. and Josh Kroenke as well being the main guy in Arsenal from that level. The fact he's referenced the change in structure and now that links to Arsenal being more proactive and a change of manager was in that, that's really interesting. I've been a part of meetings that were with Arsene Wenger, and I've been a part of meetings that now include our head of football and our managing director, our head of coach, our new technical director. Again, see, he's talking about how the structure changes. One meeting of Arsene Wenger compared to a meeting with all these different personalities, all with different roles, different specialities. He clearly is excited about the structure that's at the club. It's a different approach. It's not doing anything different to what we've done in the past, but I think when you have different opinions and you share those opinions in a very direct manner, you might disagree over things in the room, but as soon as the door opens and you walk out and you're back as a unified front, I think that allows you to make very decisive and aggressive decisions like you saw in the summer. This is a really good interview. Just the point that we're at, already 20 minutes into this video, but this is a really good video at this point in time, and a really good interview. Sorry, I think that he's answering everything correctly. There is some political answers, I can get that, and some that are appeasing, but I think he's actually answering questions and delivering a dialogue that is very open, as we've seen with some of your comments. But again, Don One says there, let's see what they do next summer. But we can't keep thinking that way. We can't keep going into every summer and saying, well, we'll see in May. We needed to see action now, and I think we got action now, and that needs to be praised. And I think that's deservedly praised for that. Could there be more departures before the foreign window closes? I defer to our football operations staff, but I know there are a few names that have come up who might not see as much playing time this season. So whether that's via a loan or a permanent transfer, I know there are discussions going on. I'll leave that to our football operations staff. I'm just saying, halfway down, I am based on, do you remember the picture that came out with his Louis Rams t-shirt on when he was in front of Raul Sanllehi on the American tour? And that angered a lot of people. I think it angered a lot of people because it showed sort of a disconnect and not a lack of social awareness in that moment. But I think that I personally in that moment may have been too rash, and I think I actually may have misjudged him in that moment, because these conversations that we're having, you could argue maybe they're scripted, and I'm not going to be naive to say that he's not been sort of prepared for this, but I think the way he speaks and to the length that he speaks on these answers does go to show a clear clarity between himself and the club, and that he clearly knows what he's doing and what the club is doing as well, and that is clearly important. Now, here's a question on Stan Kroenke. He says, is your father happy with the summer business and the direction of the club? Josh says he is thrilled. As we've had a chance to get to know some of the new faces more and more behind the scenes, and he's had a chance to be around them individually, he's only excited. I know that term has probably been worn out this summer, especially from myself, but we're all very excited. The hard part is staying patient, understanding that we're putting plans in place that are going to unfold over the next several years. We've done it with our North American teams, and we're trying to implement those types of people and decision makers here at Arsenal. I think this summer is a great example of the quality of people that we have. Again, just a really positive statement. Now, this is a question on contracts. We're not going to stay on for too much longer because I'm aware that we're already 22 minutes into this video and we're still talking about the same interview. It says there are some key players going into the final 2 years of their contracts. Is it decision time? That's 100% our football operations department. But I would say whatever we're doing, we're going to be aggressive and we're going to be decisive and we're going to communicate well and honestly through it all. I feel like I've got some parallels with him because I feel I say a lot of the same things. I felt like in the tactical breakdown video I did, I said the word passive loads. And I think that sometimes you just get stuck on saying the same word. And that's clearly what's going on here. So from a player's perspective, whether it's good or bad news, I think the best thing you can do is be honest with the player because they've only got a limited window where they can be at their physical peak. That is definitely a reference to Shkodran Mustafi. I think we know that he's going to be going. The links are recently to Roma. Whether it's a permanent or a long-term deal, I don't know. I think that could be a loan with an option to buy at the end of it. I think that's the latest rumor, but I think that's definitely a sort of a hint towards Mustafi leaving. One contract that needs addressing is Unai Emery's. How happy are you with him? I think he's doing a great job. He's done a great job and he's doing a great job. Turning the page from such a legendary manager and figure as Arsene, not only at Arsenal but in European football, was always going to be a difficult page to turn. And as a club, I think we've turned it as elegantly as we could. I think Unai's daily approach is fantastic. He's out there on the pitch. He's working. He's watching videos, communicating his daily energy and devotion to his work is fantastic and exactly what we need. I think we can all say that we are happy with Unai Emery for sure. Definitely happy with what he's doing. I think we have seen progress under the manager. But as I said, this is a very big season. And if we don't achieve our goals, that does come down to him, and the relative action should be taken based on that. What would you constitute as success? Now, this is a really good answer because he says challenging for the Premier League title is always our goal. That's what we talk about constantly. Based on the strength of our league, which is the greatest in the world, if you're competing for the Premier League title, you're competing elsewhere for other silverware as well. Whether that's the Premier League title, whether it's the FA Cup or European silverware, we want to go for it all. But we know it's not a process that's going to be easy, and we know it's going to require a lot of work. Our work has already started, and I'm thrilled to be with the group that we are pursuing with the goals that we need now. What annoyed a lot of people earlier on in the season when we saw the interview with Vinay and with Raul is that we saw an interview where Vinay came out and said that he didn't think that we would win the Premier League, and that was with the Arsenal Supporters Club, the a.f.c. sort of meeting that they had. And it's good to see that that's sort of been retconned in a way to say that we are looking to compete in the Premier League. Not to say we weren't going to win it this year, but I think it was important to say that we are competing for it. Don One says, question to Tom, are we supposed to forget the last 10 years of mismanagement and underinvestment? It's been painful. I agree with you, and it has been painful. But I think that whilst, no, you don't forget, and I think you use everything as a benchmark. You accept that, and I think that you see what's happening now and you measure it against it, and you measure that we are improving or we're being more proactive, and I think that deserves then praise. If you linger on the past, you will never succeed the way you want to. You need to be positive, and you need to be progressing and moving forwards, and I think that just lingering on past events and things that have happened. I mean, I remember when I put a tweet out at the start of the season, I said, even the likes of Mustafi, Xhaka, for me, they get a clean slate at the start of every season. They're players at Arsenal, and whether it happens at this season, until they make a mistake, I will support them, and I'll support them past the mistakes, obviously being criticising of them. But you need to let go sometimes, whilst remembering them. But you need to, there's no way you're going to ever be able to move on effectively if you don't move on from what has happened in the past. Owen Martin says it's not all been the current management as well, and that's very true. Things have changed, and I think you need to allow the new system and the new structure to take its course, and we'll see what happens with that. Let's carry on. Is this squad capable of challenging this season? We're going to have to work. We're going to have our work cut out. There are some very strong teams ahead of us, starting with the defending champions and the Champions League winners. We know that we know what we need to do. We know that there are squads ahead of us that are very strong. We've come back with a stronger squad than we finished with in May and in Baku, and I'm excited to see what this group can do, because I think they've got a mentality as well that is they're ready to get to work, and they know what they need to do on behalf of all of us. A very political answer once again, especially with the uplift in spending. Do Arsenal need to return to the Champions League? That's obviously something we talk about. There are 6 great clubs in the Premier League, and unfortunately are only 4 spots that are guaranteed. Interesting that he does references it as 6 and doesn't reference the other clubs that could possibly be challenging, like Wolves, Leicester, Everton, for instance. The relationship between Arsenal fans and the ownership of the club has been strained. How beneficial could it be if they are united behind the team? It would be one of the most powerful things that I probably would have. Probably the most powerful thing that I ever would have witnessed. Passion can go a couple of different ways, and from a fan's perspective, you're only as good as your last match. But knowing the passion of the Arsenal supporter community, it would be an incredible sight to behold being here on match days. It gives me the chills even just thinking about it, but to know that the supporters were united behind our group would be a very powerful thing, and I think that's a group you can really get behind. It's interesting that we talk about the fans, and we know that he was going to talk about it in a positive way. I'm going to leave it with this last 2 questions here. Is KSE here to stay, and are you looking to drive Arsenal forward in the long term? Absolutely. So I think that any chance of you hoping that Stan Kroenke would go is gone anytime soon, that is. So I think that we can move on from that. I'm thrilled to be involved with the club, thrilled to be involved with all these great people on the weekends here. Just the environment is something that you can't really duplicate anywhere else, I don't think. When I tell my friends that are from the States, if they're traveling through Europe, I automatically try to get them to come to the Emirates because they need to experience it. It's really a wonderful place, and I think that for footballers around the world, as we move forward as a club, I think the Emirates is a place that is always going to be special to me. It's going to be special to my family, and I'm excited about being here, hopefully for what is a long time. As I said, I think that we knew that. I think we knew that the Stan Kroenke and the Kroenkes are going to be here for a very long time. but it's good to see that something is finally changing and something is happening. Do you intend to continue investing in January and beyond? What is your vision? We have the highest of ambitions in North America. We are trying to win. The Rams were in the Super Bowl last year. I can only imagine what our Champions League final is like after being in Baku. Our ambitions are the same as the fans. We want to win, and we want to win as much as often as possible, and doing it in a fun way where they're seeing some really entertaining football as well. I think we've got the group to do it. As for January, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We've got to evaluate some things in the short term and figure out where we might need to address areas going forward. So when January does roll around, we're going to be proactive again. I think that's a really, really good way to end where we're talking about. There is a little bit more, and if you want to go and, of course, check out the rest of the article, please do go click the link in the description. It takes you right to the article. But I think that's positive. I think it's a really, really good interview. I'm really happy with what we saw. And I think that he's delivered on a lot of things that they said in Denver. And I think that moving forwards, we're going to see more proactiveness from the club and more communication as well, which is obviously really key. And I'm glad that we're now seeing that. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. Please leave your comment in the description if you're watching on playback. Even those that are in the live chat right now, thank you for tuning in. Click back on the video after it's finished. Leave a comment in the comment section below. Tell me what you think of the interview. Tell me what you think of it. Do you trust him? Do you think what he's saying is true? Are you confident that they will deliver on the promises that they're making? And are you now in a very, very different state of mind to maybe what you were a couple of years ago? I'm intrigued to know your thoughts and opinions about where you're at. And of course, leave your comments about the show. Leave a like on the video if you've enjoyed it and you enjoy keeping up to date with all the latest Arsenal news. I know that I am always very, very happy to give you guys the in-depth information and analysis and the feedback from myself and the reaction from me. Last thing, of course, please, please, please check out the tactical breakdown we did of the Arsenal 2 Burnley 1 game. It's something that I really want to sort of push as something that's sort of a niche in the Arsenal sort of YouTube world, this tactical breakdown show. And I can't do that with just me. Obviously, it takes a lot of effort and work with myself, Drew, and with Graham putting these shows together. But you guys are really, really key in sort of spreading this around. So if you could share this, spread it, retweet the tweets about the tactical breakdown, tell your friends, pass the pod, as Peter Crouch likes to say with his show. Please share it. I hope you're enjoying it. Please like it, leave your comments and subscribe with those notifications turned on so you can join in our live chat. Thank you ever so much for tuning in, people. And I will see you again very, very soon. For tomorrow, I'm hoping there's going to be an Eyes of the Opposition show for you, which will be with a couple of Liverpool personalities, which should be quite fun ahead of the game at the weekend. I hope you've enjoyed the show. If you have, please give it a like. Please subscribe if you're new and leave those notifications on so you never miss one. I'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.